Hi, good evening, all. We are here for this wonderful session. Today being a very important day for most of us who follow sport in any capacity. Today being the Olympic Day, so there are celebrations world over to celebrate this great day. Marked for the lovely event that we talk about and we wait every 4 years, the Olympics. So our webinar for today obviously has a topic on India at Olympics, past, present, and future. There is a lot to talk about, and we have great luminaries, great sports legends on this panel. And it's my privilege to first introduce you to all of them one by one, and then we get started and throw many questions upon them to make it even more fruitful exercise. I would start with having the privilege of an Olympian on the panel, Charlotte Wingfield. Charlotte, just a very quick one, a brief for her, a former Olympian from Malta. Events are 100 meters and 200 meters. She competed at 2015 World Championship in athletics and 2016 IAF World Indoor Championship. So she switched her allegiance from Great Britain in 2015 to represent Malta, which is her father's country of origin. She competed for Malta at the 2016 Olympics in Rio in 100 meters event. She was the flag bearer for Malta during the closing ceremony. This is just a very brief intro about Charlotte. Welcome, Charlotte, and thanks for being here on this lovely evening to have this discussion. I move on to my next colleague, 𝗕𝗿𝗀𝗶𝗲𝗃 Raman, as we call him, 𝗲𝗃𝗃. And 𝗲𝗃𝗃 is known for being a stylish left-hander that the country has seen, a former Indian cricketer, former head coach of Indian women's cricket team, played for Tamil Nadu state in domestic cricket for more than 17 years. He's coached several elite teams in Ranji Trophy, in IPL, which is KKR, Kings 11 Punjab, and India A and in India under 19. That's lovely variety at all levels, as they say. He's been a cricket commentator covering the ongoing finals of the Ranji Trophy, and a very proud author of his book, The Winning Sixers: Leadership Lessons to the Master, and it's already doing wonderful counts. I also have my great friend and colleague Saba Karim, who's been a former Indian cricketer, wicketkeeper, batsman, excellent top order batsman, and somebody who I tried to get every time I tried to bowl at him. It's a difficult task, but nonetheless, that's what bowlers are there to keep trying. A former selector of Indian men's cricket team, um, ex-general manager, games development, BCCI. He's worked in corporate communication functions of Tata Steel. He's been a avid cricket commentator, and he will be covering the upcoming series, the India versus England series, as we speak. So this is just very brief. As we go along, we'll know more about Saba. Somebody I wanted to talk about in the end, but nonetheless, he's the most important person to this country when it matters the most. Hockey, as it is doing rounds and doing good job from the last Olympics as we take on. David John is my colleague on the panel. David has a great background, coming from a cricketing background, having served Cricket Australia in various capacities in the 1990s and early 2000s. He's the director of Hockey Odisha in the current assignment that he holds. He's a former high performance director of Hockey India, played a key role in resurgence of hockey in the country, setting up a proper structure. And he's done a great job with the coaching education pathway programs in hockey, as we all know the kind of stuff that we have seen at international levels and good coaches coming up. So credit goes to David for doing a marvelous job. So welcome all. In fact, don't see 𝗕𝗿𝗃𝗃. Maybe he's having some net issues and he should be joining us any moment. We can get started. with the theme. As we know, this Olympic Day, the theme of the Olympic Day is Together for a Peaceful World. Hashtag Stronger Together. Hashtag Move for Peace. These are very important messages, very strong messages coming out of this Olympic Day celebration. So just to get started, let me first take the honor of going to Charlotte. Charlotte, the first one for you to get started. Since you are someone who has participated in Olympics at Rio 2016 in 100-meter event, who better than to start off this special Olympic Days webinar? What does it feel like to be part of the biggest sporting extravaganza in the world? How has been your journey? Let's hear from you.
No, thank you. And thank you for letting me join in. I think for the Olympics, it's anyone's childhood dream. And like as a kid, I was there like in the playground, like racing against the boys thinking, oh, I'm really fast. But you never actually assume to yourself that you're going to be in a stadium with thousands of people representing your country. And I think for me, it's okay, the Olympics is over a 3-week period. You're there with other athletes that have qualified, but no one actually sees how much hard work that you've put in prior to these games. People just assume that, oh, they've qualified for the Olympics, but really it's like a 4-year cycle. And within those 4 years, it's not all glory, winning medals, happy as you can. Like for me, I'm a professional athlete, but I work full time. So it's not something where you could be top 10 in the world and you're going there knowing that you're going to be paid, whereas the Olympics, you don't get paid. And every person that comes to me and says, Charlotte, oh, how much do you get paid for being at the Olympics? And I'm like, you don't get paid. But for me, it's not about the money. It's about representing my country. And okay, in 2015, I chose to swap and run for Malta because it gave me more opportunities. And I kind of wanted to put Malta on the map. With a population of only 500,000 people, not many people really know like what Malta's good at, what they know. We just don't really have that much publicity. And probably people look at Malta as more of football. But we've never actually managed to reach any World Cups or Europeans. So it's something that with athletics, it's one of the most watched sports at the Olympic Games. And for me to be able to win a prelim at the Olympics, put Malta on the map, it was just an amazing achievement. But competing at these games is anyone's childhood dreams. And the hard work of getting there is something that you can never look back on. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy. I've had many injuries. Went to Rio 2016, really wanted to go to Tokyo 2020. That didn't happen. I ended up having glandular fever, numerous injuries. And another thing massively with athletes is mental health. And people actually assume that it's easy. But I think due to injuries, setbacks, loss of funding, it's kind of everything takes its toll. And people just assume like contracts get handed out based on performances. You can have one bad season and that's it. You've lost your contracts, you've lost your funding. And it's kind of like athletes need their support. Most support is when they're probably at their lowest. It's not about throwing money at them and sponsorships at them when they're doing their best. It's where are you actually at their time of need? And right now, I think a lot of athletes are getting lost in this bubble of the sporting bubble because 1 year they're not performing and that's it, they're dropped. And then it's that mental aspect of trying to build yourself back up and get back on that performance stage. But I think it's anyone's dream to make the Olympics. I'm doing it was amazing. I achieved something that Malta's never had. They've never had an athlete win the prelims, make it through to the heats. And for me to be the flag bearer at the closing ceremony, it was an amazing opportunity. And it's something that I can always continue to look forward to. Fingers crossed for Paris in 2024. And we've also got the Commonwealth Games this summer, which I've qualified for. So you kind of just got to look at those positives and kind of just take them forwards. But no, yeah, that's kind of my experience of the Olympic Games.
Super. Just a quick one. How old were you when you actually got into the first big event for yourself?
So my first big event actually was a massive setback for me. Yes, it was the World Championships in Beijing in 2015, but I think I just turned 20 at the time, and I actually flew all the way to Beijing and I full started. So I actually didn't. I probably went there for a warm up, as everyone takes the mick out of me for saying. But I think it used me, like I used that as a motivation. I think, no, this is not who I am. I've come here. I've full started on a world championship stage at the age of 20. But then I kind of used that motivation then for the following year to try and train and prepare for the Olympics. So I went to my first Olympics at the age of 21, just about to turn 22. And if I look back and thought to myself that I'll be at Olympic Games at that young, I never assumed that would be the case. But you just got to kind of use all these setbacks. It's not really a setback. It's kind of like a learning phase. and that's how you go and progress forward and hopefully be the best that you can be. But yeah.
Lovely. What inspirational start, I can say that. And there's never an early start and never late to represent
definitely.
at the highest level. So wonderful words, and I think most inspiring to get started. Let me get Saba in. Saba, how do you see this platform being used by athletes and all the people involved in the Olympics to promote togetherness and peace in the world? We've seen some incredible examples in the past.
Yeah, I think Olympic is the big event, and all the other World Cup events and so many other sports is because of Olympic. That is why we see in World Cup cricket, the World Cup soccer, and all these multi-discipline, not multi-discipline, all these big events for different sports carry forward the same Olympic spirit that we see at the Olympics. So I would say Olympics have always been the torchbearer for the other sports to follow. And it's wonderful to note that now we have World Cup events in so many different sports, some known sports, some unknown to people from Asia or from India, but nonetheless doing very well. And I think that is the way to go forward. So I look at it in a more cohesive manner, that Olympics has shown the way for other sports to try and gain more attention at the world stage. I'm not too sure whether Charlotte is aware of the fact that Malta also has got a cricket team, Charlotte.
Yes,
And,
I am aware.
Yes. So I think, I mean, cricket on its own is trying to gain some more footprints globally. It has not been easy, but ICC over the past maybe a decade or two have worked very hard, along with the other continental, or along with the other continents to pave a way for cricket to become a global sport. We are far away from that as of now. But I think it is all because of what we have learned from Olympics, that cricket is also trying to make some kind of an entry into world sport.
Wonderful, wonderful, and so wisely said and so wisely put in, Saba. It's all about participating in the most competitive manner in the number of sports that one can, and new sports always welcome. And this is what I think our discussion is going to jog along and take momentum. I mean, let me ask this something I wanted to ask Ram. If he joins me, we will certainly get his views also. So, any thoughts on Indian hockey glorious era of 20th century? Despite so many challenges post-independence, the nation remained as one due to the Indian hockey heroics at Olympics. Hockey was indeed one of the reasons of unity among people. Thoughts on your favorite Olympic memory? If you could recall, Saba, anything that you could recall?
Oh yes, in a big way. I remember Dhyan Chand. I mean, while growing up, we only heard about him as a hockey player, and what an amazing achievement our national hockey side has had at the Olympics. Things have changed now. It is good to see the strong recovery taking place now due to the effort which has been put in by the Hockey Federation plus the Odisha state government, and you have engaged Indian coaches and foreign coaches and experts to bring in that revival in Indian hockey. So it's all good to see. I do remember some more of these giants from Punjab, Rajiv. I'm just trying to jog my memory. So many stalwarts who represented India. We won gold at the Olympics. So I mean, and one could one related to Olympics also because of the achievements that the Indian hockey team managed to get at that big event. And I think that is how it all started. And it was very sad a period when Indian hockey did not even qualify for the Olympics. But now I think we have regained some kind of our lost glory, so to speak.
Absolutely. And when you talk about hockey and the association with Olympics, the 8 gold medals that came to us before 1980 were all those memorable days. When as a kid, I remember, we were glued upon to the screens to watch Indian matches. Pakistan used to be a cracker, as you would recall.
I think the last gold we won was 1980, isn't it, Rajiv?
Correct.
So, 1980 at Moscow Olympics. Yeah, I remember
right.
that so well.
So India has won about 35 medals as on date, which doesn't speak volumes about the numbers that we talk about. But out of the 10 golds, and most of them came from hockey. So it's been a great journey for hockey, and obviously other sports. We have had 9 silvers and 16 bronze in different sports, wrestling and shooting, and I've also taken a good sizable cake now. So good are the days for Indian sporting era. So bringing you in, David, on this when we're talking hockey, I think who better than you to talk more about it. So from hitting rock bottom in 2008 to the heroics of 2021, what was the comeback all about? You were an integral part of the selection of many players who were part of the team in Tokyo. How do you reflect on the incredible journey for the nation? How did you feel when India finally returned to the podium of Olympics after 41 years in hockey?
It's obviously been a long time. I know they won a gold medal in Moscow, but that was a compromised Olympics. So 1975 was really the last time they won a major tournament, which was 1975 World Cup. So it was the goal in 2011 when I arrived to firstly just qualify, and it was for the London Olympics. And I came in the July, August of 2011, and the process was to try and qualify in the February of 2012. And luckily we beat France and we qualified. So I had the opportunity then to visit Charlotte's country, and it was a fantastic Olympic experience. London and Sydney, I think, are well known for how good the experience was for the athletes. They put on a wonderful show. Unfortunately, our men's team, we were ranked 11th and finished 12th. And there's always the optimism when you make an Olympics that the Indian hockey team's going to do well, but it's a process. And if we look back at history, we know that Argentina in 2016 won in Rio, and that team had been together for 10 years. And then again in 2021, the Belgium team, which won the gold medal in Tokyo, had been together for 10 years. So you have to understand there's a process that has to take place over a long period of time. The players have to stay together, train together, elevate their fitness levels, and fitness is a major component now of hockey. Bring their fitness levels up to the standard so they could compete at the world level. And we're proud to say that our two teams now are at that level. But so 10 years again, the span from 2011 to 2021, and we've been fortunate enough to win a bronze medal. I think for our young athletes, our hockey athletes, a lot of those were fortunate to win the gold medal at the Junior World Cup in 2016. And there's 10 of those athletes currently in the national team. So I think our window is open for more success in Paris, because those players are 8 to 10 years by the time we get to Paris. And the older players like Manpreet and 𝗲𝗍𝗃, I think, are able to sustain their performance until Paris. So I'm very optimistic about us winning medals again in Paris.
Wonderful. And then the women's team has also done exceedingly well. What's your thought on that?
Yeah,
because I think you handled them too at that stage when you were engaged with Hockey India and you were building the team for the nation.
Yeah, similarly, the team has around 10 members that went to the Junior World Cup in Germany in 2013 and have stayed together. It's once again, that was part of the process of keeping those players together, having them train together and bring their fitness levels up to an international standard. And by playing together and training together, you develop a connection on the field. It's a communication and a connection and an understanding in a team sport. And you can see the way that the Indian girls play now, that they have those connections and understandings on the pitch, and it adds to their success. So similarly, we're very proud of the girls and how they've performed, because it's, I think, changed the perspective of women's sport in India by having success. The cricket team is also having success, and I think there's been a resurgence in women's sport in India, which is great for the country, and we need that to continue.
David,
Super.
if I may ask you, if I want to find out, when you came in 2011 and the difference you have brought in. So when you came in 2011, what kind of system the Indian hockey had those days, and how did you bring about this major difference that we've come to a stage that now we are very hopeful of winning medal in Paris Olympics?
In India, in terms of hockey, and now in most sports, the infrastructure is excellent. So it would be surprising to people from outside of India that we have fantastic infrastructure here. So we have a fantastic centre in Bangalore for the hockey, and similarly now in the state of Odisha. So there was not a problem with the facilities that we have. It was more about the level of training and training intensity. And similarly, I'm very, we talk about talent clusters around the world, and it means there's a cluster or a group of talented players training consistently together to improve the standard of each other and of the team. And that's what's happened over a period of time. We've had many different coaches come and go over the last 10 years, but the training intensities gradually got better and better, and this has been driven by the players themselves. So from my perspective, it was all about their fitness and trying to get their fitness level up to a standard where they could compete against the stronger teams. And we introduced strength training and weight training and power training into the program from 2011, and it's continued until this day. And that was a major difference for the sport of hockey. Obviously in athletics with Charlotte, you should be used to doing strength trainings and gym trainings as part of the program. But in hockey, it was very much about being on the pitch and developing your skill rather than being in the gym and developing your muscles. And that's been a big focus over the last 10 years.
Indeed. In fact, lovely thoughts, because India always possessed something called skill. So, India always did well with when it came to skill, and obviously there is a huge difference between the grass and the Astra. But I think the speed and the strength which they combined and they kind of improved upon is a great reflection in the kind of competitions that they are competing and winning laurels. And all credit goes to Hockey India and people like you, David, involved in the process, Graham Reed, and many other people who are doing a wonderful job, and with state of Odisha backing them up to the hilt and giving them what is required as the morale booster as well as the infrastructure that required. It's a big thing, and it needs to be recognized. And kudos to Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha, Shri Naveen Patnaik, for his vision also. Just changing a little gear for Charlotte to come in. Charlotte, for you, India has seen women stars like P.V. Sandhu, Sakshi Malik, if you would have heard of Sakshi Malik and seen her, Lovelina Borgoy recently in boxing, step up in the last few years. They've come up, these ladies have done wonders. Talking about it from a global perspective, what are your thoughts on ever improving women's participation in recent times, and thoughts on gender equality at Olympics?
So this is actually quite an interesting topic, I think, with women in sport. For me, I think it's something that's still not actually finalized. If you think about 2012, there was the issue where they wanted women boxers to still be wearing skirts, just because they found it a bit more feminine. And then we also had that massive issue in the Tokyo Olympics, where Norway actually protested with women beach volleyball, where they actually thought, no, we want to wear shorts. Why do we have to stand there and volleyball in basically bikini briefs? So it's kind of I think it's more about freedom of speech and perception. Why do women have to feel that they have to be looked at as a female? So you're asking a female boxer to be wearing a skirt, but yet you're asking them to hit another woman in the face. It's kind of, what do you expect us as a female to do to be able to remain a female and continue doing a sport that we love? Like for Rio, there was 45% of the women that were there participating with women. The rest were men. So I think for women, we need to just kind of think about our freedom of speech and how we go about this. It's great, as most sports you'll see, there's male and female, they're increasing over the years. We've got loads of sports coming in now where it's not just male dominated, it's female. Even at the previous Olympics, 58% of the broadcasting was actually a female sports. The rest was male sports, and then the other percentage was then combined. But it's like for me with athletics, we can either choose to wear a crop top or running knickers, or I can wear a vest and shorts. With men, they can either wear the baggy shorts with a vest, or they can wear the lycras. So why is athletics seen as, okay, they can wear a crop top and knickers, but other sports you have to be like seen to wear a skirt and something else? So why is that sport different? And another thing I've noticed as well is, okay, yes, women are like improving in our sport. You've got to think about 𝗕𝗲𝗃𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗃, 𝗀𝗲𝗃𝗊𝗋𝗋𝗋, all these athletes coming out and performing best, nearly getting these world records. But if you look at the programs, you tend to end on a male sport. So if you look at the final program of the day, ends up being the men's 100-meter final. Why has it always got to be the men's 100-meter final? Why can't it be the women's 200-meter final? Because they just assume that more people are going to be watching this men's 100 than this women's 100. Whereas if you look at all the social media and the press, the more exposure is actually going out to this women's 100-meter final because they really want this women's 100-meter national record to go. So this kind of thing, I think now is, yes, we're so invested in women's sport now. Women rugby, women football are going out there. We're getting more broadcasting, but it's actually, are we actually taking a step back and looking about what everyone around's perception are? Or are we just assuming what people's perceptions are? Because they're advertising these male sports as the most dominant out there and it's what's getting the most broadcasting. But are we actually listening to the public? Are we actually getting their point of view across of what they want to see? Or is it what we're assuming they want to see? If they want to see a boxer in a skirt, then that's fine. But I can assure you not many athletes want to stand there and hit each other in the face in a skirt. So yeah, for me, it's just about freedom of speech. And if we want women to keep improving, you've got to put everything out there for us to improve. And finally, another thing with me is like, obviously this whole transgender thing where you've got males now trying to compete in women's sports. From my perspective, I think that's very unfair because, okay, they've decided that it's their body, it's their choice. If they've grown up to be a male, want to be a female, I completely understand that. But you're asking a male who's grown up as a male with all those components of a male, no matter what, if they're taking those drugs to lower their testosterone, they've still grown up in the body of a male. They are at an advantage as it is within that sport. So for example, the American swimmer that started to win all those championships, born as a male, now being represented as a woman, they're already at that competitive advantage. So it's kind of, where's the balance? You're trying to improve and increase this women in sport, but how are you actually helping us if you're allowing these type of things to happen? So yeah, that's kind of my perception of the whole women in sport. Don't get me wrong, women are improving every day. It's amazing to get most exposure. Like women rugby players are getting paid the same as men now. Football, not so much, but they are getting paid a lot. But it's what's happening to the lower end of the sports. Like imagine the Indian cricket women's team having to wear a skirt with their pads. It's not going to happen. But why is some sports deemed different to others? That's kind of my perspective of women in sport and the promotion of it all.
Interesting thoughts. In fact, very aptly put also, because there are certain things obviously needs to be rectified and corrected. And there are certain which adds some kind of a glamour to the pinnacle event that we're talking about. It's all about summer sports. Imagine beach volleyball in certain fashion. Obviously, it kind of fits the bill kind of a situation. But then great thoughts on that, and I totally respect each one of them. And I'm sure there will be a good conclusion coming out of it. Saba, just coming back to you on something, your perception as to how did things change for India with the Beijing Olympics in 2008? Was Abhinav Bindra's gold medal a turning point in history of the nation? Because as we were talking about earlier, it was all about gold medals coming from hockey, and all of a sudden this little transition and this little change happened. So to your thoughts on that?
So I think, Rajiv, after the 1980 Olympic medal in hockey, there was a lull in terms of glory in the Olympics from India's perspective. And as you rightly put across some time back, that India always did manage to do well in skill sport. Shooting was one such sport. Everybody felt that if we have to win glory in the Olympics, then shooting has to be one big force. And for that to happen, there's a lot of work done by the Sports Authority of India. We have several shooting ranges coming up, all over India. Even schools started to build these shooting ranges. So there was an influx of a lot of young shooters coming through the system. And I think all that eventually resulted in some excellent shooters coming through the system in different events. And that is why Abhinav Bindra came to the fore, and he did so well, and he brought so much of glory to the country. So yes, I think 𝗵𝗲𝗻𝗃's 2008 Olympic medal gave the rest of the Indian athletes a lot of hope that if we do well, if we follow a system, if there is an infrastructure support from the central government or from Sports Authority of India or whatever federation that sport belongs to, there's always a possibility for Indian athletes to do well. And I think one can see the churning taking place now, because thank God that eventually the system has realized that if we provide our athletes proper infrastructure, proper training, proper coaching expertise, we can still do well, not only in skill sport, but in other sports also. And we see that happening now. So I think 𝗵𝗲𝗻𝗃, as I said, gave us hope. He also gave us the belief that that if there is support from the federation, support from the concerned authorities, from different stakeholders, from private and public enterprise, there's always a possibility. I mean, 𝗱𝗲 talked about funding. And right now we see a number of our top athletes, they get funding from private sectors. So if all these things come together, there's always a possibility that India can get back into winning many more medals at the Olympics.
I totally agree. And the 3 medals coming out of that Olympics, one being the gold, probably took over everything else. But it was a big thing, and it was a moment that India has arrived back with a big bang. Just in the same breath, Saba, will the Tokyo Olympics glory help India to make that big jump in next edition? Has Neeraj Chopra brought another much needed sporting wave in the country, similar to that of 𝗵𝗲𝗻𝗃 in 14 years earlier?
Yes, Rajiv. I think Neeraj Chopra's first ever gold medal in athletics for India has really boosted the morale of so many other athletes. And the way the government has been organizing this 𝗕𝗲𝗀 India Youth Games, 𝗕𝗲𝗀 India School Games, it will all, as David has rightly said, that we need to have that kind of talent coming through. But there should be someone who can unearth that kind of talent, and then we can offer them proper training. So if we have that kind of base, and I mean, I draw parallel to cricket. Cricket is a roaring success in India because of the immense pool of players that keep coming out on a regular basis. And all that happens because of the kind of system which the official body in India has created. And it has taken time, and David is absolutely right. It takes time to build that kind of a conducive environment for athletes to come up. So I guess the kind of work which is taking place now, I'm very hopeful that in the next Olympics we'll have many more medals coming our way. I think all that can start from the Commonwealth Games coming up in Birmingham. And one more thing, Charlotte, you'll be surprised that I think about a decade or about 2 decades back, cricket for women was being played in skirts.
Yes.
And I remember in my hometown when I watched the first test match that was played between India and New Zealand. So the New Zealand team played in skirts, and the Indian women team, they played in trousers. So you can understand it was still
the culture
stage for women cricket in India. But all that thankfully has changed, and we see that kind of equality taking place at least in cricket.
Yeah, definitely.
Those were the course corrections that we talked about. That it can happen, it needs required. And great thought, Saba. You mentioned about 2 things: cricket, which we will quickly get on because that's something which we need to talk about. But before that, you also mentioned about 𝗕𝗲𝗀 India. Now, who better to ask than David? David, you recently attended 𝗕𝗲𝗀 India Youth Games in Haryana, where many young stars were in action. How do you see the grassroots programs and such initiatives by the government eventually leading India towards more medals at Olympics in future?
I've been to all 3 versions. There's been 3 versions so far. And with each version, it's growing and growing. In most other countries in the world, and Charlotte can comment on this, they'll generally have a national under 16 championships and under 18 championships and under 21 championships, which is providing opportunity for the younger athletes to gain experience in major competition, strong competition. Because at the end of the day, the more experience we have in this competition, then the better we're able to cope when we get into pressure situations like the Commonwealth Games and the World Cups and the Olympic Games. So for me, there's a talent scouting opportunity to see where the best athletes are within India, and then putting them into programs still as juniors, and so we can funnel them into the battle programs so that they become much stronger seniors. Secondly, there's the opportunity because everything is telecast by Star Sports. It's giving the opportunity for the country to be encouraged by the amount of money that's being spent on our youth and sports in this country. So that's important, I think. And thirdly, it's a great opportunity for not just our athletes, but also our coaches and all the other support staff that go with developing an athlete. Individual teams, the hockey teams have a lot of support staff, and it's also a process for them to get experience in competition. And this is also important.
I think following on from...
Absolutely.
Sorry, I do...
Yeah. Charlotte, I was about to ask you.
No, following on from that point, and with the under 16, under 18, under 20 competitions, we've also got to kind of be careful as well. I know quite a lot of athletes that have been given sponsorship deals from the age of under 20, and then there's that expectation that they should go on and then be the next Olympic, then be the next World Championship. But what you've got to realize that these kids are still potentially only 18 years of age. They've not developed yet. They don't know the life stresses. They've got their parents kind of doing most everything for them. So we've kind of got to be careful with not losing talent. We're actually trying to help this type of talent. So you've got athletes of 18 years of age now that are getting 2-year Puma deal contracts. Then at the end of that 2 years, they haven't performed as much as those contracts wanted them to perform, and they've dropped them. But if anything, that's kind of demoralizing them and kind of think, oh, they don't think I'm going to be good enough. And we end up losing this amazing emerging talent because we're trying to invest in them at such a young age for an expectation that we want them to pursue further. So I think we've just got to kind of we give kids too much of an expectation. Like for me, it was all about the enjoyment, growing up, doing something I loved. And now we're trying to put so much pressure on the development of kids for our own satisfaction of glory as a coach, potentially. I don't know, that's my opinion. We've got to try and, as a government body, as countries, we've kind of got to absorb what's happening at the moment, kind of praise athletes and what they're doing, rather than trying to invest so much into them for the expectation and the glory of our country.
Absolutely. In fact, this is one particular aspect that we need to be very careful, because it's all about building the future, building the career of those athletes. In fact, me and David, we've been talking about incentivization to the athletes, and at what level and what type and how it has to be structured, because too much of money getting into an athlete early on could also distract and could also bring in more problems. Now, this is something which I guess one needs to, when you incentivize somebody, encourage somebody, motivate somebody in different forms, you got to be careful that end of the day, you don't lose the real essence of it, real objective of the whole exercise. So it's great thoughts on that. And just shifting gears, as I said, the two important elements that we picked from what Saba said was Khelo and cricket. So obviously, let me bring this element for Saba. Saba, next Olympics is in Paris 2024, which brings an interesting topic for all of us. At Paris 1900, cricket was played in the games for the first and the last time. And so many years with Paris Olympics around the corner, the sport is back in contention, with ICC pushing for its inclusion in 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, I wish it had continued. If that had happened, then cricket definitely would have been a global sport. I think whoever was in charge, and I don't know what transpired.
We had 3 teams then.
For what reason it all stopped? Because, and I'm so glad that finally, after years, we are getting cricket in the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. The last time it happened was in 1998 in Kuala Lumpur. I'm not too sure whether 𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 was part of that or not. But India participated in that Commonwealth Games. So I'm glad that cricket is finally getting into multidiscipline event, because right now many are not aware that more than about 100 countries play cricket, but very few know about it, or very few of the local people of that country know that they have a national side, and all that is happening because there is no central funding. And the only way you get central funding is that once cricket becomes a global sport, once it becomes a multidiscipline event. So if cricket gets a foothold in either Commonwealth Games or the Asian Games or the Olympics, only then the establishment will realize the potential, and then you expect some funding from them. because so far it is only the ICC funding that has helped so many other nations. I'm talking about the so-called emerging nations, to organize sport and to improve the infrastructure, but that is not enough. Very few countries are blessed like India, where we have such huge amount of money coming in cricket. So I think it's very important for one to get global, to turn cricket into a global sport, and second, for it to become multidisciplinary event sport, so that you get central funding.
Absolutely, so true, and most befitting, because cricket, being a very popular sport in most of the most what you call sports enthusiastic countries. It's not just Southeast Asia, as you said, that it's played in different countries, and people are not even aware of the ICC World Series that happens in the non-test playing nations.
Yes,
The kind of generation of a game that is happening through that chain. So very well put. Good to have WV back. He had some issues with the internet problems, but great to have you back, WV. Anything, Ram, on this thought, that cricket in 2028 Olympics?
It'll be great. The one development that will probably provide a lot of impetus, and also the belief that cricket can really go into different parts of the world, is the momentum that's been created in America, because there's a lot of interest that's been generated. There's a lot of cricket played, and obviously when the ICC is again doing a lot of things that's going to encourage people to take up cricket in America. But I, for one, believe that the fastest route for cricket to percolate into different countries, or at least the countries where cricket is not played now, is through the women's vertical. The simple reason being that they are very enthusiastic, and it's always a case of women leading the way in a way, because men's cricket is going to be difficult, because they'll be involved in ever so many things, and it's always going to be challenging for cricket to be traveling to different parts of the world through the men's vertical. What is the format that you're looking to play at? T20? Yes, that's what is going to be popular. That's how it's going to really gain momentum in other countries. But yes, there has to be a start somewhere. If it takes off, if it starts, once we get a start, I think then the entire world will be watching. Let's face it, now cricket is perhaps being watched in the Commonwealth countries and other countries where cricket is just starting to sprout out. But if it is an Olympic event, then you get a lot more countries watching it, a lot more people watching it. That will really create a shift in momentum. I think all it needs is a bit of a impetus, and once we get it going, and then the fun starts.
Indeed, it's not just the medal prospect for the country, it's also the interest generation. The broadcast would go over the roof, and many other factors come into play when we talk about a popular game like cricket taking its precedence. Any thoughts on that, David, with your cricketing knowledge and background on cricket being included in Olympics as we go along?
Both Australia and India would be particularly pleased if it happened, because we'd be medal chances at the moment. So we could add to our medal tallies. I think from the funding issue and the broadcast issue, suddenly you're getting nearly 1 billion people from India watching the Olympics purely because cricket's being played. So from a broadcast rights perspective, on the IOC, it has to be attractive to them to introduce a sport like cricket. And we've just seen that the BCCI have signed the second highest deal ever in sports for the next IPL. So there's obviously a tremendous amount of money available for cricket, and if the IOC can leverage off this and then distribute to other sports, this can only be a benefit.
Indeed. I also feel, Rajiv, that I think one of the hurdles that ICC has faced in trying to convince the Olympic authorities to include cricket in a multidiscipline event is for how many days can it continue, and what about for instance, in cricket you have, in a place like West Indies, you have West Indies plays as one cricketing nation, but But for such multidisciplinary sport, West Indies has got 3 or 4 or 5 countries that participate. So that was one of the hurdles, how to get about it. So I think ICC has come up with some kind of a solution wherein they're having, in the Caribbean, they're having their own tournament that decides who will participate in the Commonwealth Games. I'm talking about the one that is going to take place in Birmingham. And similarly, the ICC has tweaked some kind of a rules for that. In one day, you have 3 to 4 games. And there was a discussion of having T10 instead of T20 cricket. I'm not aware of what is the correct format as of now, what kind of format has been chosen. But whatever it may be, whether it is T20 or T10, it is very important that that cricket gets into a multidisciplinary event like the Commonwealth Games or the Olympics. And I think there is a talk, and you rightly said, into 2028 Olympics that cricket should be included. The other thing,
Indeed,
I would like to get your thoughts of Charlotte and David also on this, Rajiv, is I've always believed that for cricket to grow, it is very important that the locals should embrace the sport. If you try and draw an analogy to what happened to India in cricket, it is because the locals embraced the sport in such a wonderful manner. The Britishers brought it to India, but it is the local people who gave the right kind of impetus. And that is why we reached a stage where we have such talented cricketers coming through, and the game has become so popular. So I feel whether we go to US, whether we go to Southeast Asian market, whether we go to some of the European nations, I'm even talking about Malta or Netherlands, it is the locals who have to take up that sport. So whoever is in charge, the authorities I'm talking about, the cricket associations of that particular country, you have to see to it that you get into the grassroots level, get the schools to participate, you get more and more locals taking up this sport. Many of these countries where cricket is played mostly by the so-called immigrants, either from the Caribbean islands or from India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka. So I think that change has to come about for cricket to grow in a more rapid manner.
I think the barrier that there is that it's a very closed sport and it's got a very closed audience. Like before I actually knew the sport of cricket, I didn't know anything about it. I just assumed it was boring because I didn't know anything. But once you actually start to know the rules, get involved, it's actually a really exciting sport. But the problem is, because there's so many cricket competitions, like tournaments at the moment, like we had the 100 balls last year. That was such a good format of cricket. But I think people just thinking, what more do you need? Like you've got your 100 balls, you've got your like in the UK, you've got your Vitality Blast, you've got your IPLs, T20, your 50 overs. So I think if it was to be brought into the Olympics, I feel like we can't have every single country there. There's going to have to be those qualifying rounds where you just think, right, the top 16 countries in the world will go head to head. Because at this moment in time, okay, New Zealand or Australia could be up there as the gold medalist, but realistically, there could be 10 teams that this title could go to. And we look at athletics and we know at the end of athletics, the USA will be top of that leaderboard. Whereas with cricket, we do not know who's going to come out of it. Like England beat New Zealand last week for the first test match. So it's kind of what we want. And I think it's more of understanding. And for me, I know there is no money going into Malta cricket. All our money is going into either football, where a lot of its money is, and we've got quite a lot of money now going into the athletics because we've got a massive small nations competition going next year. So quite a lot of money is going into that. But it's the belief from, I think, the government, the national governing body of, is this going to be a sport that we want to invest in? And it's because of the audience. It's such a close audience. And for me, I used to look at cricket as a posh sport. It kind of tends to go for those that have got quite a lot of money, quite a lot of the England team. The boys went to private schools because their parents have got a lot of money. Like, would you see a working class, lower class boy playing on the England cricket team? Probably not. So it's kind of, what market are we trying to reach? Are we trying to get that adversity of allowing those that have not got a lot of money? Like, for example, a 𝗕𝗏 cricket bat will probably cost you about £1,200. Do these lower class parents have this type of money to be able to afford these cricket equipment for these? Whereas athletics, you literally need a pair of spikes and you'll be on the track and you'll be sprinting. So it's all about funding and how much money these governments are willing to invest into these sports, and if they are going to be able to get a medal at the end of it.
Indeed, and this is where I think when we talked about funds coming through the broadcast and from the popular countries, it becomes the overall pool of funds available for the governing body. I mean, considering that the talk going on of cricket being included from 2008 Beijing Olympics, the sad part is cricket is out of the provisional list of 28 sports for 2028 Olympics. So I hope somewhere ICC and the big wigs may be able to muscle their way around and try and convince, because I think it's the 2023 there is a meeting which is due where they're going to be taking some call on the new sports getting added. Let me just ask you, Charlotte, on this, talking from the perspective of a fan and an athlete, how popular are the non-Olympic sports in Malta and other nearby countries, like cricket for Asian people? What are the other sports you would love to see become part of in the future?
Honestly, the non-Olympic sports in Malta, I would say, are not very popular, because they know if they were going to participate in that sport, that there's no money being pumped in it, so they're not going to be able to make a successful career out of it. It's hard because, like, for me, do you know what? One sport that I would love to see in the Olympics is cricket, and it'd probably be the T20, because obviously it's fast, it's quick, there's excitement, and literally anything can happen. But it's just, I think it's just going to take a very long time for them to consider it being in the Olympics. And as I said, I think it'll probably have to be the case if the top 16 countries in the world only participate. And then it's the unfair of, this is meant to be a combining every country in the world and you're not given the opportunity. Whereas, like, for athletics, there are countries, for example, Malaysia, that get given a wild card to ensure they have an athlete, a male and a female from that country participating in that sport. But we're still giving those athletes an opportunity. We're giving them the qualification rounds to be able to try and qualify. It's the same as the World Cup cricket coming up now. You've got to be obviously the top 16, whatever, in that. I think the non-Olympic sports are just not very popular because they know that they're not going to get much out of it. Like with the Maltese cricket team, I've never been to one of the matches, but I can assure you I'll probably turn up and there'll probably be about maximum 40 spectators, and it's probably the parents and the family of those players that are playing. And what's frustrating is I know the ground gets kept after so very well. Like, they invest so much time and effort into looking after it, but not many people tend to understand that sport. Like, a lot of money. One of the sports that Malta enjoy very well is water polo. I can tell you now, we get a big crowd for water polo, so that's something they would be interested in. But we've just never had a team qualify for the Olympics from Malta in water polo. But another thing is down to numbers. It's how many athletes are allowed to attend from that country. I know for this current Commonwealth Games, we are only allowed 4 athletes on the athletics team. So it's depending the allocation of that country as well. If you're saying you can only take 4 athletes, it's kind of, and say if you've got 10 people qualify, it's just like, well, we've only got 4 places, and that's due to the population of the country. Whereas England's got a capacity of 72 athletes just from athletics. Whereas I know my whole Maltese team for this Commonwealth Games is probably going to be about 20 athletes. Yeah. So it's kind of the allocation of those sports. So it's hard.
Interesting.
You want to bring everyone in and participate in a sport they really enjoy, but it's all down to funding at the end of the day. It's what the government's willing to fund, and they know the ones that are going to get the most popular broadcasting views, and that probably is football and stuff like that. So if anything, it's going to take time. And I think cricket being in the Commonwealth Games this year is amazing, because I think it's going to get people understanding the sport a bit more, and we're going to get more viewers. And I think more people are just going to actually really want to enjoy and watch it, and show that that there's not one definite winner here. Like, we could have Jamaica on the athletics team winning all the Commonwealth Games medals, but realistically, would Jamaica win a T20 Commonwealth Games medal? Probably unlikely. But yeah, I think it's nice to see a different winner, basically, I think. And I think it's just going to take time.
And maybe you can double up, Charlotte, maybe you can double up as a cricket rep for Malta.
Yeah, that's
in fact, I was about more and more people to propagate our sport in your country.
I know. I think it's hard because I don't actually know any female cricketers in Malta. I wouldn't even say I know any male cricketers, and a lot of the male cricketers in Malta are ones that are not Maltese. They've just come over to play cricket in Malta to join the team, whereas most of the England cricket team are England cricketers. And as I said before, it's the persona that cricket is a posh person sport, and it's coming from a family of wealth, and that's the problem we have.
Indeed. Interesting topic. In fact, we can go on and on with it when it comes to obviously talking about a new sport and cricket, which is close to our heart, obviously as a nation, not just as cricketers sitting here in the panelist, but sky is the limit, as we say, and then we only hope for the good of the sport, cricket gets that, the due importance as we go along. And that would only add, because there aren't very many team sports where you have, the fan base traveling from one country to another to enjoy and to be part of that culture and the sporting spectacle. So there are many additions to it, and I'm sure all these gets addressed as we go along. David, you have any thoughts before I wrap up with my last question? Do you have any thoughts on cricket in 2028?
I think you're probably better in 2032 because Australia's hosting.
Yeah. Is it the patience part, or is it?
We already have the grounds and the facilities available, so this is also part of, I suppose, part of the discussion. I mean, could America provide 6 cricket grounds or 4 cricket grounds, whereas in Brisbane the grounds are already there? I think hockey's a good example because in hockey they only have 12 teams. There's always a qualifying each. There's one country, or one team qualifies from each continental, and the host makes 6. And it seems to be with every Olympics there's a new qualification or type of qualification. So for 2024 Paris, they're having 2 qualifying tournaments, and the top 3 will then go to the Olympics to make the 12. Okay. Whereas other times it's based purely on world rankings, and the top 12 would go. So, but hockey's also having a discussion because there's interest in the new format of hockey, which is hockey fives, being promoted as another Olympic sport. And some would say, well, you already have 11-a-side. Why do you need another version? But we've seen with basketball, we've got 2 versions of basketball. We have 2 versions of volleyball. And the people from hockey are certainly pushing for another version of hockey to be played at Olympic Games. But I think for cricket, probably our best chance is 2032, because you're already preaching to a country that is very strongly invested in cricket and understand the value of it.
Yeah. Indeed, I think that's great thought. In fact, this is most apt, as you rightly said. The infrastructure is something which one doesn't need to bother about, and the culture, most importantly, the people who follow that sport to the core, and that's very important. And great discussion on how cricket can get its due also, and many other aspects that we talked about. But before I wrap it up, because we're hitting the time, I just want to bring an element which is obviously a big subject to discuss, but I just want to touch upon that and just have quick views. Charlotte, let me just bounce it off to you. Generally, top Indian athletes are part of the elite youth setup, not before an age of 12 years. Whereas in Europe, players are already in high performance centers and advanced academies by the age of 7 and 9. Do you think this can be a reason for a difference in quality between India and the world?
For me personally, I don't think any athlete should be in an elite setting before the age of 16. Because you're already putting pressure on that child to perform optimally before they've actually grown, developed, understand the sport, and know what they're doing. So I think the age should be later. Then I think the age of 12 is stupid, to be honest, because I can assure you now, looking at me as a 12-year-old, you would not have thought I would be as an Olympic athlete. So I feel now you're just putting so much pressure on these young kids to perform that you're just going to have a burnout. And if anything, we're going to reduce athletes coming up, then we are actually increasing athlete participation. But obviously, that's my point of view. So I don't know what, I don't know what you guys think.
Sabi, your views on that?
We are coping with this in cricket, Rajiv. We have kids as young as 6 and 7-year-old who come to the cricket academy for coaching, and it's the parents who drive them. And as coaches or as former cricketers, it is our responsibility to explain to the parents that at this age, it is more important for the child to just enjoy his life instead of trying to put so much of pressure. And Charlotte is right. in my opinion, because cricket, the competitive cricket tournaments in India takes place at the age of under 14. So I can understand, getting into such kind of a setup from the age of 10 or 11. That's when there is some maturity, and then you can guide those youngsters through a proper way of coaching, so that they're able to excel as they progress. So yeah, I mean, that is a huge issue here in India, and we have you must have experienced. I have experienced so many of these cricketers burn out at a very young age because they possibly can't cope with the kind of pressure that comes through.
And a lot of their parents get involved.
Yeah, and I go back to the earlier conversation about money coming in. Look at what is happening in IPL. 17, 18-year-olds are being pumped in with so much of money.
Correct.
So that comes big factor, because there's no one to help them, to guide them, or to monitor their finances. And the expectations go up, and they lose the way. So you don't want that to happen for a youngster who's growing up at this kind of a pace.
Absolutely. David, since you are very much into the high performance balance of it, your thoughts on this? And how does India cope with the high performance setup that it's getting into, and probably jogging along well? I won't say on a fast track, but in a reasonably decent development mode.
Firstly, there's a relatively recent study from Finland looking at high performance athletes, and the outcome of the study was, please do not put athletes into a high performance program under the age of 16. Allow them to play a multitude of different sports and have fun in their sport, and ultimately let the child choose their sport rather than the parent or the coach or the physical education teacher pushing them into a sport and forcing them to continue in that sport, because they tend to drop out and not be successful anyway. From the Indian perspective, many kids in hockey in particular don't actually pick up a hockey stick to the age of 12. So they're not actually picking up their basic skills until age of 12 or 13, which for me is actually too late. You need to at least master some basic skills from about 8 to 10 years of age. But that doesn't mean this is a high performance program under the age of 12. This is just general play and enjoying the sport for the sport that it is. And introduce competition at a later age, and then it becomes high performance, I think, and professional after the age of 16 or 17, when physiologically and mentally the child themselves has actually made the decision that this is something I want to do. Because we discuss a lot about the physiological training, but what's becoming more apparent with modern day athletes is the mental aspect of the game, their resilience, their mental health. And this is becoming more and more important with all athletes in this generation. And whilst India might be a little bit behind other cultures at the moment, that's not a reason not to focus on mental health. So this is important for the youth of all countries that are coming through, I think.
Super, super stuff. And I think for the listener and viewer friends, and this must be a delight, and especially for those young parents who probably become more ambitious than the word itself. So we need to be wise, because that's the job that's the job that the parents have to do, the guardians have to do, and obviously with most of these advanced centers coming up. So they are working on the scientific method in the most apt manner. This is time that we wrap it up. But before we do that, I think we started the show with naming your earliest Olympic memories, Charlotte, and I'm going to ask everybody else also. We'll end it up with our favorite Olympic hero down the years. Who have been your all-time favorite Olympic hero?
Probably have to be Usain Bolt, won't it? Like, it's not, I can assure you, like, I think that would be everyone's, because what he achieved is far beyond what anyone else has achieved, and still to this day everyone's still talking about him. He's an idol, he's a role model, and everyone's looking up to him now to want to be him. So I think it's probably Bolt.
Wonderful. Sabi, yours?
Oh God. I'm trying to attach some more history to this. So I go back to Berlin Olympics, and Jessie Owens comes to my mind.
Yes.
Because there's so much more attached to it. The kind of race he ran, the kind of opposition he had to face, and the fact that it was played in Berlin during those tumultuous times in the world, and for him to come out and pave a path for other black athletes to come through. I think all that was magnanimous and a wonderful effort.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Jessie Owens.
Lovely, super. David?
For me, it's Allyson Felix, the American sprinter. I think champions in any sport, it's their longevity, how long they're able to perform at such a high level. And she's the highest medal winner, female medal winner in athletics. I was lucky enough to meet with her in London, believe it or not, at the McDonald's in the village. And I was taken by her humility, what such a nice person she was, even though she was at the top of her game. And I think she went on and won 3 gold medals at the London Olympics. But even today, she's still competing at her age and at a very high level. So for me, it's Allyson Felix.
Wonderful, super. And all of these are legends and, the personalities that the different eras would talk about. And in fact, if you ask me, I would go as recent as 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗃 Chopra, because the kind of, Abhinav, as we talked about, that he brought about the change after the hockey era that we saw with all the gold medals coming in. But I think Neeraj has changed the perspective of how we look at the athletic side of the sports that we represent also, and the youth that is coming through. And there's such a great talent which is coming through, adapting to javelin and the sports that can bring glory. So I personally feel, 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗃 Chopra is one of my favorites out of the lot I have seen, and hope that the form which he's continuing, he's recently won, in the world stage also, as part of his preparation to the next Olympics. So going forward, yes, all the best, Neeraj, and all the best, India. So coming to the end of it, thank you very much for this most enlightening session, Charlotte. Lovely time, and sorry to bother you, though it is a good time in England. I'm sure you're in the afternoon, so it's not a big of a botherance, but thank you very much for being there, and great insights and great thoughts shared with all of us, and I'm sure the viewers and the listener friends really enjoyed. Sabi, as usual, always been marvelous and great with your insights, and thank you very much for all that you have contributed. David, I keep talking to you and I keep learning from you every time. I keep whenever I have a chat with David, it's more than the webinar I can talk about, but David is full of all that great acumen and great knowledge that he can impart with. So thank you very much, all of you and lovely people, and I wish you all the very best. Have a safe day and good health, and thank you to all the listeners and audience and all the people involved in this webinar, and we wish all our sports luminaries and the sports aspirants all the very best on this lovely day of Olympic Day. Thank you very much, and namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.